All right. Recording is started. I am started, and I want to welcome every single one of you to the line. Um, as I was saying here, folks, I've been focused on the beginning, and now I'm going to switch over, and I am going to jump to the end. Do me a favor, as you guys are coming on the line, put yourselves on mute. I know that there's probably something that I can do on my end that will mute everybody as they come on. Unfortunately, it's just not happening right now, and I want to jump into some content for you guys because I don't have a lot of time here. I've got a call that directly follows this one with the pit team, and I want to get into stuff here. So I'm going to share my screen, and here we are. All right, folks, so I'm going to jump to the other side of the spectrum and talk about a follow-up. What do you go through in a follow-up? And I'm just going to kind of give you guys what it is that I go through in a follow-up. And you got to play it by ear a little bit. I will, kind of share that with you is sometimes, you got to adjust on the fly. But for the most part, there's a few key parts to the follow-up that you want to go through, okay? And the first step in your follow-up is you want to ask questions.
His name is Giovanni Arnold. Now, do we have
Okay,
the sound?
folks, we got to mute somebody else out.
All right, on the next one.
All right, muted. This is why I love having Ron here, is Ron manages all this stuff for me, and I don't have to worry about it. All right, so the first step is questions, folks. A lot of times when I'm doing a follow-up with somebody, they were contacted originally by one of my team members. So at this point, it's really easy to ask them to just share with me more about, themselves and more about, where they're at, what they're looking to accomplish. And I really ask it just that way. I say, hey, I've got a little bit of understanding of who you are, but do me a favor, share with me. What have you got going on in your life right now? What are you looking to accomplish with us? And then I just let them share. The key is figuring out where their interest lies the most. What's piquing their attention? And then what I do is part two is when I get their hot button, so to speak, when I get to the point where they've shared with me what they're most interested in. So for example, if this is somebody that is your lead that you contacted or your warm market or whoever it is, your questions are going to start off further down the line than me. They're going to, or not me always, because obviously I have my own guests and stuff as well. But your questions jump into in the follow-up. So what's sticking out to you the most about this whole program? What are you liking the most, right? And somebody else out. All right. What are you liking the most? And you really want to get to what is it about Renatus that has them even showing up to a follow-up? Because I'm going to clue you in on something, folks. If they've been to a presentation and then they're coming back to a follow-up, they're interested. If they're not interested, they don't show back up. So you got to figure out what is that's keeping their interest. And then, okay, this is not fun having to mute somebody every single time they come on the line. And it's not you guys' fault, it's mine. I probably didn't set this up properly. So I'm just going to put this over to the side, hopefully. All right. So the next thing that I do is after asking lots of questions, I repeat back to them what their interests are. I repeat back to them what they see that they like the most. I repeat back to them how that relates to my journey. So this is really about, continuing to hold on. All right. This is just relating with them. So if they say, I really see this as a way that I can connect with people who are in the field and that are actually doing real estate. then I go into, yeah, absolutely. In fact, let me tell you a little bit about my story. Let me tell you about, the programs that I went through and how I didn't have a community and how, this community has really helped me and how much of my resources come back through the community, right? And then the third thing I want to do is I want to model. I want to model their journey. So I don't know what you guys are seeing on your screen. Hopefully this participants box is not even showing there. So I want to model their journey. And this is really the key component, is modeling their journey. And then fourth, I want to find the funding. And fifth, enter the order. If they're ready to go, I want to enter their order, right? So again, first thing, I ask questions. And anybody that's been on a follow-up with me, any of my team members that I've done follow-ups for, anybody that's watched the recordings of follow-ups that I've done in the past, this is the basic model almost every single time. Now, it switches a little bit in the order that I take it based on the conversation, and that's why I start off with a lot of questions. So I'll give you an example of one of the easiest follow-ups I've had in a really long time. It was yesterday, actually. And so yesterday, we connected with a guy who was out in Seattle, and so he called off of a roadside sign. And I actually had one team member that I sent out there to place the roadside signs, and we shared the leads. And then I took those leads, the ones that were mine, and I moved them over. And I had another one of my team members call those leads. And so they had gotten him to the Tacoma presentation, and then we were doing a follow-up. And so we get on the phone, and I ask him questions, and I just kind of get a feel, and he had a story similar to mine. And so he said, hey, I really like what I'm seeing because I've spent a lot of money on seminars, and it just feels like there's a structure to this. And what interests me the most is, and he couldn't remember the name of it, but basically he was saying the Renatus iOS. So he's like, that system where, and this is partly for you guys, just a side note, you got to know your product enough to when they can't explain it very well, you still know what they're talking about. So he's like, that system where it, you get access to properties and it analyzes them and I was like, oh, you're talking about Renatus iOS, the software. And he said, yeah, the software. I really saw that. That was something that I saw that could make a huge difference. And I said, yeah, absolutely. Let me tell you a story about Tim, and the story doesn't have to be about you, right? So let me tell you a story about Tim and how Tim is right now, he's done, when he started with me, he had never done a real estate deal. And now he's done properties in, multiple different states, sometimes with properties that he never saw in person. In fact, he's doing a wholesale right now in Minnesota, and he's never been to Minnesota. And he's going to make $20,000 on this deal in Minnesota, and he's never been there. And the way that he did it was the lead came to him through his warm market, somebody that knew somebody that had a property that they needed to get rid of. And they brought it to Tim. And then Tim did his research with the iOS software. And then what he did was he called me, and I reached out to Mike Adams, who I knew was in that marketplace. And so I connected the two people together, and it's a win-win because Tim's going to get a nice fat wholesale fee, $20,000 wholesale fee, and Mike Adams is going to make a huge profit on the deal in flipping it. So I just really was just relating to what interested him the most. He loved that. He thought it was awesome. And then I went to model their journey, and I'm actually going to show you guys how I do this. But in this scenario, I got to skip this step. So I skipped this step of modeling the journey because guess what? He didn't need it. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. I said, did they go through the education when you saw the information? He said, yeah, they kind of went through it. I said, do you want me to show you what the education looks like and give you a little portion of the class? And he said, well, no, I don't think that's necessary right now. I've actually got somebody, and we were on Zoom, so I could see his face, right? And he looked behind him. And he said, I've actually got somebody that's telling me that I need to be cooking dinner soon. And I said, okay, great. What is the most important thing that we can cover right now? And he said, really, it's just about finding the funding. He said, that's the part right now that I'm not sure about. I've got $5,000, so it's not like I don't have any money. I just don't have $20,000. And I said, okay, great. So would it be okay with you if I just showed you many of the options that other people have used to fund their education? He said, yeah, absolutely. And then that's where I went through the different funding options. So I went from step 2 to step 4, and then we went to step 5. So really, questions, repeat back, and relate, right? So let's throw that in there. And relate. When I say relate, I mean relate a success to what they're most interested in. Relate a story to what it is that has their attention. Relate your story, if you can, to what is piquing their interest, right? So questions, repeat back and relate. So here's the thing. When you're asking questions and when they're telling you what they're most interested in, don't go off on a tangent about something that they didn't say interested them. That's how you lose their interest, right? So if they say, hey, I really liked, the iOS software, like this gentleman did, don't jump over and say, well, let me tell you all about the contracts and the forms and yada, 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 yada with the education. In fact, I didn't even show him the education because he didn't need that. He could already see there was a plan. And so I jumped from repeating back and relating with him, and we went right down to the funding, right? And I'm going to show you what I do in the funding process. So modeling their journey, let me show you what that looks like. It really consists of 2 things. And sometimes I do both. Sometimes I do one or the other. And, sometimes, rarely, but sometimes I do none. And so let's switch over here and show you what I would do. We're going to go to desktop. And I would actually go to myrenatus.com. And I actually let them watch me. If I'm in a Zoom, I let them watch me. If I'm sitting there with a one-on-one, I go and I log in to Renatus. So I let them share my screen. I log in over here. I go to education, and I actually walk them through, and I say, here's your essentials classes. And let me tell you about what you're going to learn here, and let me tell you what you're going to learn there. I'm not going to go through the full version with you guys, but I just basically show it to them. And I say, hey, listen, when these classes are updated, guess what? It's going to show you because you're going to take the pre-assessment again. So what you can do is you can actually take the pre-assessment, and that's going to allow you into the class. And that way you know what you need to learn. And then afterwards, there's going to be a post-assessment. And that way you're going to figure out what you did learn. So this is your essentials. And when we get to phase 1, you'll understand what I mean when I'm talking about phase 1. And the next thing, we're going to go over here, and we're going to go to AIT. And AIT, you're going to have all these different vocational tracks. And I kind of talk a little bit about the vocational tracks and what's going on there and whatnot. And then I go over here and I also say, with this live education, and by the way, it's always going to play for you automatically.
Hi, everybody. This is Jay Stark.
Then I pause it, right? And I say, hey, if we had live classes going on right now, guess what? You would be able to chime in no matter where you're at across the country, no matter, what you have going on. You could actually get online. You can watch the live classes as they're happening here live. Now, the other thing you can do is you can actually register for classes, and you can come and meet the instructors. Right now, we don't have any scheduled that you can register for, but just so you know, that's an option. I'm modeling for them, and I want them to imagine themselves coming to class. I want them to imagine themselves logging on and watching the classes as they're happening live. I want them to imagine themselves getting on and watching their classes in the Essentials and the AIT. And so that's where I move to the next step. And so let's switch over here again to the whiteboard. And what I do, so I'm just going to clear this. Hopefully you guys have written this down. First step, ask questions. Second step, repeat back and relate. Third step, model their journey. That's what we're talking about right now. Fourth step, find the funding. And fifth step is enter the deep. So let's jump over here, clear this, clear all my drawing. Move this out of the way. And then I just say, okay, this is your three-phase process to getting into your first deal, because that's kind of the key. Most people are looking at, hey, how do I get into my first deal? How do I make this happen? And so here's what you're going to go through. Here's the likely scenario. Here's what we've seen a lot of people do is phase one, you're going to focus on learning your essentials classes. So I showed you what those essentials classes are. So there's actually 60 hours worth of education within the essentials. So you got to decide for yourself how fast you're going to go through those 60 hours to move on to phase two. But phase one, you're going to focus on your essentials. I want you to understand here that we want you to have, you know, an understanding and a knowledge base before you go jumping into real estate deals. The way that I've seen a lot of people lose money in real estate is they try to get into deals too early when they don't really understand the fundamentals. And so the essentials is the fundamentals. It is going to help you learn how to structure yourself, structure your entities, save on taxes, find money, all the things that you need to know no matter where you focus your time in real estate. Good news is, and I always throw this out there, good news is you can actually watch this on double speed. So guess what? If you don't have, a tremendous amount of time, you can speed it up to whatever speed you can realistically comprehend the information and hold the information. And then at the end, but where right here, as you're moving on to phase two, I want you to take a specific class that's going to help you move on to phase two. And that is your investor ID. Your investor ID class is going to help you figure out where you at, what resources you have, and what does it make sense for you to focus on right now? Because then you're going to move on to phase two. So when you take your investor ID class, you're going to move on to phase two. Now, your phase two is choosing a vocational track. So I don't know about you, but many people, when they're coming to me, they need to first of all put some capital in the bank. So for example, you might choose fix and flip. Fix and flip is a great way to learn the aspects of real estate, where you can create joint venture agreements, and you don't have to set up long-term partnerships. You don't need to have any long-term money. It's really about going through the process and getting a lump sum check. Now, you're going to figure out what you actually choose, but fix and flip, for example, if you chose that, you're just going to focus on about 60 hours worth of learning within that vocational track as well. So then, once you have a baseline of knowledge in a specific strategy, you're going to move on to phase three. Now with phase three, you're going to continue learning. I want you to figure this out right now. This is a continuous learning path. You're always going to be learning for a lifetime. I'm a decade into this. I'm over a decade into this, and I'm still learning. I'm still going to classes. I'm still reviewing information. I'm still getting the updates. So you're always going to be learning. But then you're also going to take action. So within this action, you're going to take some focused action based on what you learned in the classes. But the other thing we like you to do is just take action. We want you to get comfortable making offers. A lot of people have a mental hang up in just making an offer. And I understand it. You're now signing a document that says, if everything looks good, I'm going to come up with $200,000 or $400,000 or $2 million or whatever it is on that first deal. And so our goal for you is to get really comfortable making offers. So in here, in phase 3, we would like to see you make 100 offers. Now that might seem scary to you, but here's the thing. We've had people make 100 offers in less than 30 days. So this is doable. When you're just shooting offers out there, you're probably doing it on the retail marketplace. So I'm going to be honest and open with you. Most of these are not going to be accepted because you're going to make your offers where the numbers work for you, not where their offer price is. So out of 100 offers, you might have 5 of them that get accepted, right? And what you're going to find is out of those 5 that get accepted, it's likely that 2 of those, they're just not deals. They just, when you get into your further due diligence, you realize that either there's a lot more work or the value isn't where you're supposed to be, or, the neighbors are like crazy crackheads that are going to deter any buyers from ever wanting to live there. Whatever it is, you've got 2 of them that you're just going to get rid of. But you're most likely going to have one of them that stands out. And I'm repeating their name most of the time, just so you guys know. People like to hear their name. So I'm usually saying something like, John, you're going to have one of them that stands out. That's your deal. That's the one that you want to hold on to. And you want to do that deal. But you've got 2 more there. And most likely those 2 are going to be somewhere in the middle. They might be deals. They might not be deals. They're kind of, baseline or borderline. And with those, there's a couple of things you can do. You can renegotiate, or you can possibly wholesale them on. And we've seen people be able to take these deals that maybe they weren't ready to move on, and they were able to get paid at the end of phase 3. They were able to just wholesale the contracts to another investor that either had lower money costs or a crew in place, or were better prepared to take on that particular deal. So there's the possibility you could get paid at the end of phase 3. But realistically, we're going to focus on having this one deal right here. This is going to be your deal. And typically, for example, if this is a fix and flip transaction, Joe, you're looking at about 120 days before you see a paycheck. So I just want you to get a clear understanding here. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then you're looking at about 120 days before you see a paycheck. So let me ask you something, Joe. With understanding this, does this look like a path you can follow? They always say yes, right? Yeah, absolutely. I think I can do that. Okay, great. With understanding how much learning there is and the actions that you're going to take, I mean, I've seen people do this in less than 90 days, and I've seen other people that have taken multiple years to get into their first deal. How long do you feel like you're going to take? And then some of them will hum and haw, but a lot of them, if you say, I've seen people do it in less than 90 days, then that's what they say they're going to do. And then you write down whatever they say. Okay, great. So you think you can do this in 90 days. Now, if they say, well, I'm going to do this in 2 weeks, prepare them. Say, okay, you understand that in order to do this in 2 weeks, you would literally have to be, going through this information on double speed for, 12 hours a day for the next 2 weeks. Are you really prepared to do that? Oh, no, I guess I'm not really going to do that. Okay, great. Let's set a more realistic expectation. Well, 90 days. Okay, 90 days. I'm going to hold you to that. I want you to take the action necessary. Now, here's the key. The first step is getting to day 1 over here. Now, day 1 starts, Joe, when we get you started into your education. So, as you're looking at spending about $20,000. Have you thought about how you're going to fund your education? The answer is yes, no, maybe, whatever. If it's yes, say, great, how would you like to fund your education today? At that point, you can move on to step 5 if they already know how they're going to fund it. Likely, though, that's their big issue. They feel like there's this big hurdle of the $20,000. And so they say, well, no, or yeah, I don't really see a way for me to do it. I'd like to go over options. Or in the meeting, they said that there's a lot of options. I just need to know what they are. And so that's when I move on to finding the funding. So clear this drawing. And then we move into finding the funding. And I'm going to have to rush through this really fast, guys, because I've got to be on a call in just a few minutes. So I've got to rush through this. So I talk about, okay, there's really three main areas that I see people find their funding. There's personal resources, which includes savings, checking account. This could also be a retirement. Now, obviously, I speak a little bit more onto these things normally, but right now I'm just going to rush through them. This could be life insurance. This could be stocks, bonds, gold, silver, any type of place where you might be holding that money. The next thing is, what I do, I'll just let you guys know if you're doing this via Zoom, is I switch colors. So I say the next thing is traditional credit. Now, traditional credit is credit cards, and I go into the benefits of credit cards because a lot of people are still scared of credit cards, and I talk about why they're one of the most beneficial lending instruments out there. This could be auto loan. This could be home equity. On another time, guys, we can go into detail, and I can share with you how I actually build in stories to these different options. And then I go into and I talk about, okay, this could be just an unsecured loan. Unsecured. Come on. This could be a business line of credit. There's a lot of things that it could be with traditional credit. And really, you're just brainstorming with them. You're sharing with them how other people have done it, right? Let me just move this out of the way. Hopefully that doesn't impede you guys' view. And then I switch colors one more time. And I say the last thing is getting creative. Oops. That's a really bad color. I probably wouldn't use yellow. So creative. And creative comes down to, you could just sell stuff. A lot of people have a bunch of junk that they don't really need, and so they could sell stuff. And I relate stories to this again. I'm not going to do that for you guys right now, but we can do that another time. Sell stuff. You could borrow against stuff. If you have stuff that you're not willing to let go of, but you could part with for a period of time or borrow against, then that's a way to do it. And then the last one is private money. And private money, I usually put a heart by because this turns out to be love money. You know, this is somebody that you know, and I really go in and emphasize, and I want to make sure that I tell you guys this, you know, with the private money, I say, don't go to them and say, can I borrow $20,000 to do this real estate thing? Instead, what you want to do is say, you know, Aunt Sally, Uncle Tom, Grandma, Grandpa, Mom, Dad, brother, you know, whoever it is that you're talking to, say, hey, listen, I've decided to, to get into real estate. And I've got this great group of folks that are going to help me through my first few transactions. The thing is, I just need to get the same education that they do in order to work with them. And so I'm not asking you to borrow me the $20,000 or $30,000, whatever you're going for. Instead, what I'm asking for, Uncle Tom, is would you be willing to lend me that money if I can give you a better rate of return than you're getting on it somewhere else? And then I throw in Caleb's story about how he did it with, you know, he used his grandma and how now she won't let him pay her off because she likes collecting the interest payments. And again, just emphasize the stories. And then I go through and I say, Joe, out of all of these options, what do you feel like makes most sense to you? And then I let them talk and they tell me. And so if they say, well, I've got a retirement account, I think I could go, you know, do that. Say, great. When do you think you'd be able to do that? And when can we follow up? Well, I'm going into work tomorrow. I can talk to my PR person and we can go from there. How about we talk on Friday? Great. Friday works good for me. Let's schedule a time. And then we just follow up and we talk about, hey, were you able to find the funding? Yada, yada, yada. No, hey, I was able to get some, but not all. Okay, great. Let's talk about some of those other options we talked about before. Out of all those other options, which do you feel like makes the most sense to you? Well, actually, I've been thinking about it, and I do have equity in my house, and I was thinking about going that direction. Okay, great. When would you be able to go get over to the bank and get that started, and when do you want to talk again? And boom, 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 following up through the process. And then also I will emphasize, in the meantime, while they're looking for the funding, do your best to continue to build to the next event. So you're modeling, and then you're entering the order. Literally, you want to enter the order right there, regardless of whether they have all of the funding or not. If they have a plan, enter the order. And I just literally flip over to the order entry, or if I'm, on a three-way with, another team member, I say, hey, why don't you just pull up your account? Let you share your screen, or, hey, here's the computer, pull up your account. Let's enter the order. Let's get you started. We'll set up your account now. When you find the rest of the funding, we'll figure out the rest. We'll finalize this order, and we'll get you started on your education. Sound good? Good, great. Let's get you in. So with that, there's one chat in here. What is the process for just essentials class holders? Ravi, I don't understand that question. Clarify for me real quick, because I've got literally 30 seconds and I got to jump onto another line. So Ravi, if you're still on here, help me understand your question.
I'm here, boss. I've got a bunch of essential people that are just getting started. They just joined. So the 30 is for mainly ex-combo holders. The exact same process.
Ravi, you're cutting out.
There's no vocational track.
I'm not hearing you, Ravi. You're cutting out really, really bad. Unfortunately, I think it might be your internet connection, but I'm not hearing you. All right. Ravi, we'll have to answer that offline because I got to jump off the line here. So, folks.
Okay.
Do me a favor and do the work. Go out there, find the people, tell the story, build for offense, do these follow-ups, and get in there and make it happen. Appreciate you guys being on here, and I apologize. I don't have any more time. I'm actually supposed to be on the Pit Team webinar right now. So get out there and make it happen, folks.